Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Yanti. I will explain about the present and informed approach. Method as a unified, cohesive, finite set of design features is now given only minor attention, at least reached the point of maturity where we recognize the diversity of while we may have outgrown our need to search for such definable methods. Nevertheless, the term methodology continues to be used as it would in any other behavioral science to refer to the systematic application of validated principles to practical contexts. You need not therefore subscribe to a particular method with a capital M in order to engage in a methodology. The first, an enlightened eclectic approach. It should be clear from the foregoing that as an enlightened eclectic teacher, using in terms of number of possible methodological options at your disposal for tailoring classes to particular context. Your approach includes a number of basic principles of learning and teaching on which you can rely for designing and evaluating classroom lessons. The way you understand the language learning process, what makes for successful and unsuccessful learning may be relatively stable across months or years, but don't ever feel too smug. The interaction between your approach and your classroom practice is the key to dynamic teaching. The best teachers always take a few calculated risks in the classroom, trying new activities here and there. The inspiration for such innovation comes from the approach level, but the feedback that this teacher gathers from actual implementation that inform their overall understanding of what learning and teaching. Certain classroom objectives and tasks might demand a focus on grammar. Here the list. The first, language classes should focus on A. Meaning and B. Grammar. The second, students learn best by using plans of A. Analysis and B. Intuition. The third, it is better for a student to A. Think directly in the second language and B. Use translation from the first language. 4. Language learner need A. Immediate reward and B. Long-term reward. 5. With new language learners, teacher need to be A. Tough and demanding and B. Gentle and empathetic. 6. A teacher's feedback to the student should be given A. Frequently and B. Infrequently, so will develop autonomy, unless a communicative class should give special attention to A. Accuracy and B. Fluency. The second, communicative language teaching. Is there a currently recognized approach that is a generally accepted norm in the field? The answer is a qualified yes. The qualified yes can be captured in the term communicative language teaching, and the qualification to the answer in the numerous possible ways to defining CLT and a plethora of interpretation and classroom application. In the 1940 and 1950, the profession was determined to behavioristically program a scientifically ordered set of linguistic structures into the minds of learners through conditioning. The late 1980 and 1990 saw the development of approaches that highlighted the fundamentally communicative properties of language, and classrooms were increasingly characterized by authenticity, real-world simulation, and meaningful tests. It's difficult to offer a definition of CLT. It is a unified but broadly based, theoretically well-informed set of tenets about the nature of language and of language learning and teaching. The following interrelated characteristic as a description of CLT. The first, class objectives are focused on all components: grammar, discourse, functional, sociolinguistic, and strategic of communicative competence. The second, language techniques are designed to engage learners in pragmatic, authentic, and functional use of language for meaningful purposes. The third, fluency and accuracy are seen as complementary principles underlying communicative techniques. 4. Students in communicative classes must ultimately use language productively and receptively in contexts they are not trained outside the classroom. 5. Students are given the opportunity to focus on their own educational process through understanding their own learning styles and through developing appropriate strategies for independent learning. 6. The teacher's role is as a facilitator and guide, not an all-knowing knowledge giver. You can with some assurance let on to the CLT label and, like a member of a club, affirm that you believe in CLT and be allowed to step inside the gates. But as with every issue in our field, there are caveats. The first, beware of giving lip service to principle of CLT. The second, avoid overdoing certain CLT features. The third, remember that there are numerous interpretations of CLT. In order to take that perspective, some demythologizing, on other hand, a brief summary is appropriate. The first, learner-centered instruction. This term applies to curriculum as well as to specific techniques. It can be contrasted with teacher-centered and has received various recent interpretation. Learner-centered instruction includes the first, technique that focus on or account for learner needs, style, and goals. The second, techniques that give some control to the student, group work, or strategy training, for example. The third, curricula that include the consultation and input of students and that do not presuppose objectives in advance. 4. Techniques that allow for student creativity and innovation, and last, techniques that enhance a student's sense of competence and self-worth. Because language teaching is an domain that so often presupposes classrooms where students have very little language proficiency with which to negotiate with the teacher, some teachers shy away from the notion of giving learners the power associated with a learner-centered approach. The second, cooperative and collaborative learning. Research has shown an advantage for cooperative learning as opposite to individual learning on such factors as promoting intrinsic motivation, heightening self-esteem, creating caring and altruistic relationship, and lowering anxiety and prejudice. Include among some of the challenges of cooperative learning are accounting for varied cultural expectation, individual learning styles, personality differences, and overlaps on the first language. The third, interactive learning. At the heart of current theories of communicative competence is the essential interactive nature of communication. An interactive course or techniques will provide for such negotiation. Interactive classes will most likely be found the first, then a significant amount of pair work and group work. The second, receiving authentic language input in real-world context. The third, producing language for genuine, meaningful communication. Four, performing classroom tasks that prepare them for actual language use out there. 5. Practicing oral communication through the give and take and the spontaneity of actual conversation. Writing to aim for real audience, not contrived ones. 4. World language education, one of the most popular terms currently sweeping through our profession. World language has been so widely and divergently interpreted that it unfortunately is on the verge of losing the impact that it once had. 5. Content-based instruction, content Brinton, Snow and West, is the integration of content learning with language teaching aims. And the last 6. That's best instruction. While there is a good variation among experts on how to describe or define a task, Peter Skinner's concept of task seems to capture the essentials. Okay, thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.